It was supposed to be a B-side, a throwaway, a song they didn't even want to release as a single, recorded in a basement studio with a budget of just $5,000 and a vocal booth that was a converted closet, and became one of the best-selling singles of 1990 and of all time. Number one in over 30 countries. And 35 years later, it's still the song they reach for every time Hollywood wants to sell you fashion. First, in 2006 when the first Devil Wears Prada came out, and then in 2025 when the sequel was first teased on a short trailer that had the whole world talking. And now, as The Devil Wears Prada 2 is out in theaters, everyone is dancing to Vogue. Same song every time. And here's what most people don't know. Madonna didn't invent Vogue. She didn't invent voguing. She didn't even invent the title of the song. All of it, the dance, the poses, the swagger, the strut, was created by Black and Latino kids in Harlem who were thrown out of their own houses for being queer. They built families they called houses. They competed in underground ballrooms. They invented an entire language. And one night, Madonna walked into a club in New York, watched two of them dance, and decided to put it on MTV. What happened next is one of the most contested stories in pop music history. It's the story of a culture that went global and a community that got partial credit. A story about the song that became immortal and the dancers who taught Madonna the moves, and the tragic finale of some of them who never saw the royalty checks. Welcome to Uncovering the Cover, the podcast that explores the hidden stories behind music's greatest transformations. Today, we have the story of Vogue, a song which started as a throwaway B-side, took an entire underground queer culture global, and became the song that has soundtracked every fashion industry's self-image for 35 years and counting. This is the real story of how Vogue became the cover of an entire culture, the most powerful song in fashion, and the cost of getting it there. The biggest pop song of 1990 was supposed to be thrown in the trash. Kind of. They were gonna put it on the B-side of a single nobody remembers. Then, a producer in a basement studio said, "This is too good to lose," and he saved one of the most important songs of the decade. But the song was only the second most important thing happening that night. The first was where the song came from. Let me set the scene. It's December 1989. Madonna is 31 years old. She is the biggest pop star on the planet. She has just had 16 consecutive top 5 singles in the United States, a record that still holds today. No artist in history has ever done that again. The record begins with Lucky Start from 1983, which peaked at number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100, and it carries with it songs like a Virgin, her first number 1 in 1984, Material Girl from 1985, which was number 2, and 6 more number 1s, among them Like a Prayer and Papa Don't Preach, which we talked about in our 9th episode of Season 1, which you can still find on your favorite podcast platforms right now. That episode is titled Papa Don't Preach and How Madonna Has Shaped History. And today, we give you more where that came from. After those 16 top 5 singles, there is a small problem. Oh Father, released in 1989, was the 4th single from the Like a Prayer album, and it only reached number 20. It was the first single to miss the top 10 since 1984. 5 years of total dominance, and the streak was broken. Madonna and her label Warner Brothers decide they need something to put on the B-side of her next single, a song called Keep It Together, just to make sure the release performs. They call up a remix producer named Shep Pettibone. Shep was the king of the dance remix. He had reworked songs by George Michael, Pet Shop Boys, New Order, and he was giving a budget of $5,000. So Shep goes to a basement studio on West 56th Street in Manhattan. The studio is not even his. The vocal booth is a closet. They put bifold doors on it and called it a recording space. Madonna flies in from Los Angeles. She lands, gets into a car, gets to the studio, walks downstairs, takes one look at this closet, and probably wonders what she has signed up for. Shep had built the instrumental of the track on his own. He used a Roland TR-909 drum machine. It has 116 beats per minute, house music, pure disco. There was a 2-bar bass loop, a synth pad, some house piano. It was finished in 2 weeks for almost no money. Madonna walks into this closet, sings the verses in the first take, sings the chorus also in the first take. But here's the part of the story almost nobody talks about. Where did the title come from? Where did the spoken section about Marilyn Monroe and Marlon Brando come from? Where did Madonna get the idea for any of this in the first place?
Greta Garbo and Monroe, Dietrich and DiMaggio, Marlon Brando, Jimmy Dean, on the cover of a magazine, Grace Kelly, Harlow Jean.
A few months earlier, Madonna had walked into a New York nightclub. The accounts vary on which one. The Sound Factory, the Paradise Garage, somewhere in their orbit. And she had witnessed something she had never seen before. 2 young men dancing on the floor in a way that didn't look like dancing. It looked like a fashion shoot. They were striking poses, freezing, then exploding into precise hand and arm movements that imitated runway models. They dog-walked. They dropped to the floor. They contorted into shapes that looked like Egyptian hieroglyphics. They were doing battle dancing against each other, and the people watching were screaming, judging, and reading them. 2 of the most prominent dancers in the scene at the time were Jose Gutierez and Luis Camacho. They were members of the House of Extravaganza, a chosen family of mostly Latino performers who had built one of the most respected ball houses in New York City. The dance was called Voguing. Madonna was hypnotized. She wanted to know everything about it, where it came from, who created it, how they trained. Within months, Jose, who was from the Dominican Republic, and Luis from Puerto Rico, would be on her tour, and within a year, they would be in her music video. Within 2 years, they would be on stage at the MTV Video Music Awards in Marie Antoinette costumes, voguing in front of 50 million people. But the dance they were doing, the world where they came from, was older than any of them. To understand voguing, you have to go all the way back to the 1860s, more than 120 years since Madonna released Vogue. Drag balls have existed in New York City since at least 1869, when the Hamilton Lodge in Harlem started hosting them. Drag was a working-class form of entertainment, where black queens, white queens, immigrants, performers would put on their best clothes and compete for a trophy. But by the 1960s, those balls had a problem. Black queens were rarely winning. white queens were preferred by the judges. Black performers would have to lighten their faces with white makeup just to be taken seriously. In 1967, the final of the Miss All-American Camp Beauty Contest brought together contestants from across the US to the New York City Hall to compete in categories like modeling and costume. And it was also the subject of a documentary film titled The Queen, which came out 1 year later. After the top 3 finalists were announced, a black queen named Crystal LaBeija was fed up after she didn't make the top 3. She walked out of the competition in protest in front of everyone. In the documentary, she is seen protesting against what she considers unfair treatment toward black queens in this type of competitions.
She's a friend of mine, darling. Monique, would you tell her why you didn't come? Because she knew it's Victor Holler. She said, Crystal, darling, don't go. Because you're not going to get it. And that's why all the true beauties didn't come.
It's in bad taste and you're showing your colors and stuff.
I am doing it bad, but I have a right to show my color, darling. I am beautiful, and I know I'm beautiful.
Don't tell her about she's showing no color.
May I say this to you?
Taking the wrong way. Shit, she looked bad. And no way of what you say can do about it.
I have a right to show my color, she said. And then, with her friend Lottie, she did something that would change queer American history forever. She started her own ball. She founded the House of LaBeija and made a competition that was only for Black and Latino queer people. That small act created the modern ballroom scene. Through the 1970s, more houses were founded. The House of Dupree, the House of Pendavi. By the 1980s, the houses had multiplied. The House of Ninja, founded by a dancer named Willi Ninja, which we'll get back to. The House of Xtravaganza, founded in 1982 by a man named Hector Valle, and reorganized later as primarily Latino house with members like Hector Xtravaganza, Jose Xtravaganza, and Venus Xtravaganza, whose tragic story you may have seen in the 1990 film Paris is Burning. A house was not just a dance crew, it was a family. The mother and the father were the elders. They took in younger queer kids who had been kicked out of their homes by their biological families, a brutally common experience in the 1980s when AIDS was decimating the gay community and shame was at its highest. The houses fed these kids, housed them, taught them. They competed at balls in categories like realness, femme queen, banshee boy, and a category called Vogue. The dance had been called other things first: pop, dip, and spin. It came out of the breakdancing's era, but instead of breakdancing's acrobatics on the floor, voguing was about poses, striking a pose like a model in a magazine, specifically like a model in Vogue magazine, hence the name. Here's a brief explanation of the dance origins from a video made by Vox Media.
The name voguing comes from Vogue magazine. The movements that define the dance are based on model poses from the fashion publication. Willi Ninja, who's called the godfather of voguing, also drew inspiration from martial arts, ballet, gymnastics, and even pantomimes. In the critically acclaimed documentary Paris is Burning, Ninja defines the dance as an extension of throwing shade. Instead of fighting, two people would settle their beef on the dance floor. So whoever had the best moves would be throwing the best shade.
The dancer named on the video more than any other became the public face of the dance form. His name was William Roscoe Leake. He was born in Long Island in 1961 and grew up watching Fred Astaire and the Apollo Theater with his mother. He taught himself how to dance and took the name Willi Ninja because his dancing style was inspired by martial arts. He became mother of the House of Ninja. People started calling him the godfather of voguing. Willi Ninja taught children at the Christopher Street Piers late at night. He brought voguing to perfection. He took it to Europe. He taught Naomi Campbell how to walk a runway. And in 1989, before Madonna ever heard of any of this, an English producer named Malcolm McLaren made a song called Deep in Vogue, which featured Willi Ninja in the music video. It was the first time voguing had been on a record.
This has got to be a special tribute to the houses of New York. LaBeija and Extravaganza, Magnifique, Celeron, Omni, Ebony, Dupree,
There's definitely something familiar in this rhythm, and the song was an homage to all of the houses that had sprung across the country, particularly in New York. And although Malcolm McLaren's song wasn't a mainstream hit, it became a #1 on the Billboard Dance Club Songs chart. It also charted in Italy, Australia, and the UK. However, it would take a different artist with a different machine behind her to take Voguing global. We'll, of course, get to Madonna after the break. Welcome back. When Vogue was finished, the label executives at Warner Brothers heard it for the first time and lost their minds. They knew immediately it was a #1 smash record. They were not going to lose it as a B-side, so they pulled it off the back of Keep It Together and made it a single in its own right. They attached it to an album called I'm Breathless, which was technically the soundtrack to Madonna and Al Pacino's film Dick Tracy, even though Vogue had nothing to do with the yellow overcoat wearing police detective. The song needed a music video, and Madonna, even at this point in her career, had a remarkable instinct for picking directors. She gave the job to a 27-year-old commercial director named David Fincher, who had directed Madonna's Express Yourself the year before. He would later become an acclaimed film director of movies such as Seven, Fight Club, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and The Social Network. But back in 1990, he was a guy with a camera and a vision. Fincher decided to shoot the music video for Vogue in black and white. He pulled the visual references from the golden age of Hollywood photography, specifically two photographers named Horst P. Horst and Irving Penn, both still alive at the time, both legends of fashion photography. The video was a deliberate homage to a period of glamour the world had largely forgotten. The choreography was credited to Jose Gutierez Extravaganza and Luis Camacho Extravaganza, the two dancers that we talked to about in the last segment. They turned the video into a tutorial. Every pose, every hand gesture, every angular hold, it was a curriculum from the ballroom floor, transmitted in 3 minutes and 19 seconds to every TV set in the Western world. The song needed a moment, and Madonna delivered it on September 6, 1990 at the MTV Video Music Awards. The performance is one of the most replayed in MTV history. Madonna walked out on stage in a Marie Antoinette gown, white wig, full 18th century French court dress, a corset she had been laced into. Jose and Luis, who are also on the music video, came out in matching costumes as her gentlemen. They voguing through the entire performance. It was Versailles meeting Harlem. It was the most expensive ballroom set ever staged, and it told you exactly what Madonna had decided to do. She was going to take voguing, a dance born from poverty, from queerness, from race, from rejection, and put it on the most lavish stage available, dressed in the costumes of European royalty. The optics were either an act of artistic elevation and defiance, or an act of cultural extraction. For those of you not watching on YouTube but listening to the podcast on other platforms, we'll link to the video of the MTV performance on the show notes. Vogue went to number 1 in the United States, knocking Sinead O'Connor's Nothing Compares to You off the top of the chart. It went to number 1 in nearly 30 countries. It sold more than 6 million copies as a physical single. And to put that into perspective, that was the highest selling single of all of 1990. Keep this in mind because this was the year that gave us songs that defined the beginning of the decade. Songs that we still talk about today. Just pay attention to this list. Depeche Mode's Enjoy the Silence, Kiss Forever, George Michael's Freedom, CNC Music Factory's Gonna Make You Sweat, Divinell's I Touch Myself, Vanilla Ice's Ice Ice Baby, Guru Josh's Infinity, Roxette's It Must Have Been Love, UB40's Kingston Town, Nothing Compares to You as we mentioned, Belle Biv DeVoe's Poison, New Kids on the Block's Step by Step, AC/DC's Thunderstruck, and MC Hammer's You Can't Touch This. All of them in 1990, and Vogue surpassed all of them. Madonna then took Vogue on tour, the Blonde Ambition World Tour, which would become, thanks to Madonna's decision to film backstage, the documentary Truth or Dare. Jose and Luis were on that tour, so were 5 other dancers, most of whom were gay, several of whom were HIV positive. The tour was Madonna's public manifesto on queer culture, on the fight against AIDS, on freedom of expression. She kissed dancers on stage. She talked about safer sex when most American politicians were still refusing to say the word AIDS in public. And here's where the timing gets unbelievable. While Vogue was still on the radio, while the Blonde Ambition Tour was crossing Europe, a young white queer filmmaker from New York named Jenny Livingston was finishing a documentary she had been shooting for 4 years. The documentary, which we mentioned a little bit ago, was called Paris is Burning. It went inside the actual Harlem Ballrooms. It featured Pepper LaBeija, Dorian Corey, Willi Ninja, Octavia Saint Laurent, Venus Extravaganza. It captured the actual scene, in its actual rooms, with the actual people in the actual costumes, not the polished, choreographed pop version Madonna was selling. It was the raw, joyful, dangerous, devastating reality.
You have space to do all that you intend to.
This movie is about the ball circuit.
A competition amongst gay people under one roof.
It's like crossing into the looking glass.
A house, their families, kids with broken homes or no home at all.
My name is Andy Xtravaganza, and I am the mother of the House of Extravaganza.
I'm Willi Ninja, the mother of the House of Ninja.
Ninjas hit hard, they hit fast. We come out to assassinate.
I am Pepper LaBeija, the legendary mother of the House of LaBeija, and I've been around for 2 decades. Reigning, that is.
Some of them say that we're sick, we're crazy, and some of them think that we are the most gorgeous, special things on earth.
They call them competitions. But believe me, they're wars. I guess that's just a statement of the time.
It speaks for itself.
That was the trailer for Paris is Burning. If you're only listening to the podcast, we'll leave you the link to the video of the trailer in the show notes. Paris is Burning was released in 1990 at the Toronto Film Festival, and in 1991 it came to the US. It went on to gross over $4 million on a tiny budget. it became one of the most influential queer documentaries in American history. It also became the source of one of the most uncomfortable conversations about exploitation in documentary filmmaking, because while the film made Livingston a celebrated filmmaker, several of her subjects threatened to sue, claiming they had not been compensated. Although Livingston replied that compensation in documentaries is not something that's common, which is true. She was cleared of any lawsuits against her. Now, Venus Extravaganza was murdered before the film even came out. Willi Ninja would die of AIDS-related complications in 2006. Dorian Corey died in 1993 with a mummified body found in a trunk in her apartment closet. A story worth knowing. So the timing of Vogue is impossible to overstate. Madonna's song dropped first. The MTV performance was first. The tour was first. Paris is Burning came after. By the time the documentary hit theaters, Madonna had already taught the world what voguing looked like, and the world had moved on. For the dancers in the actual scene, this was a complicated victory. On the one hand, voguing was on every TV set on earth. The fashion industry started copying poses from balls. Donna Karan and Michael Kors started taking inspiration from ballroom kids. House of Extravaganza members were getting modeling work. Naomi Campbell and Iman were learning runway technique from Willi Ninja. On the other hand, the actual ballroom scene was being decimated, not by stardom, by AIDS. The very community that had created voguing was being killed off in real time, while a song based on their dance was selling 6 million copies. In 1990, Vogue was the song of the year. The dancers who created the moves were touring the world. The ballroom culture was on the cover of every magazine. And in the same year, sometimes in the same week, some of those dancers were dying. The most extracted from culture in pop music history was being killed by a virus the US government refused to name. And the question that has followed Vogue for 35 years was just beginning to take shape. What do you owe the people whose work made you famous? More on that coming up. Most pop songs have a 6-month shelf life. Vogue has a 36-year strange hold on culture. Every fashion week, every drag show, every Pose episode, every time Hollywood wants to sell you elegance, they reach for the same 1990s song. The question is no longer why Vogue worked. It's why nobody has been able to make a song that replaces it. Let's talk about the second life of Vogue now, because pop songs do not usually do what Vogue did. Most #1 hits have a moment. They peak, they cool down, they end up on a nostalgia compilation, and 20 years later you hear them in a CVS. Vogue didn't do this. Vogue has been Madonna's most performed live song ever. Her current keyboardist, Ricky Pagiot, has said it has been on the setlist of every world tour Madonna has done since 2008. Every single one. It was on the Streaky and Sweet Tour, the MDNA Tour, the Rebel Heart Tour, the Madame X Tour, the Celebration Tour. It is on streaming services with hundreds of millions of plays a year. It is the song the world reaches for whenever Madonna trends. And then there's a cover and sample lineage. Because while Vogue is technically an original Madonna song, inspired by everything we already talked about, it has been re-recorded and reinterpreted by a stunning roster of artists. Bette Midler covered it on Broadway as part of a Hollywood tribute show. The Glee cast covered it in 2010, and that version went to number 23 on the Billboard charts 20 years after the original. Drag queens cover it in every major city in the world, every weekend. It has been mashed up with Britney Spears' I'm a Slave for You. It has been remixed for every dance floor compilation released since 1991. In 2012, the music publishing company VMG Salsoul sued Madonna and Shep Pettibone, claiming Vogue had sampled a horn part from a 1976 Salsoul orchestra song called Ooh, I Love It, Love Break, a sample so subtle that VMG said it took 21 years and improved technology to detect it. The case went to court. The judge ruled in Madonna's favor. The verdict said no reasonable listener could even hear the sample, let alone recognize it as Soul's work. Vogue stayed clean. But the more interesting cover lineage isn't about lawsuits. It's about how the song has been absorbed into the cultural bloodstream. When Lady Gaga released Born This Way in 2011, the comparisons to Madonna were so loud that even Madonna herself made a comment in an interview with 2020 on ABC.
So, of all of these, there's one question that almost blew up the internet.
Oh.
They want to know what you think about Lady Gaga. And do you feel she's copying you?
I certainly think she references me a lot in her work. Sometimes I think it's amusing and flattering and well done. I can't really be annoyed by it or insulted by it because obviously I've influenced her.
It doesn't feel like a ripoff.
No, because she's she and I'm me.
Would you ever do a duet with her?
It hasn't occurred to me, but never say never.
And when you saw Born This Way, did you think?
When I heard it on the radio. Yes, I did. I said, that sounds very familiar. Yes.
Some argue Born This Way sounds a little too much like Madonna's Express Yourself. And that doesn't feel annoying.
It feels reductive.
Is that good?
Look it up.
We did. It means simplified or crude. That was a good answer.
When Beyoncé released Renaissance in 2022, the album was a love letter to Black queer dance music, and ballroom culture was at the center of it. When the TV show Pose premiered on FX in 2018, the entire show was set in the ballroom world that Madonna had stepped into and out of. Britney Spears, Rihanna, and Ariana Grande, among others, have played the song during live performances of their tours. Even Bad Bunny brought the song to an entire new generation when he sampled Vogue in his song Vogue 787 from his album Nadie Sabe Lo Que Va a Pasar Mañana. Bad Bunny has even played with drag, and the song in his album talks about being a model who's now being photographed for Vogue magazine, and there's a line there that says, if I were a woman, I'd be Madonna, I'd be Rihanna, setting trends.
Vogue, Vogue, ahora soy modelo, fotito pa' Vogue. Ando la modelo que salen en Vogue, ay.
And then there's the fashion industry, which absorbed Vogue more thoroughly than any other audience. The song became the unofficial anthem of fashion advertising. It was used in the 2003 Sex and the City finale. It has been used in countless of commercials. It has been used at Fashion Week openings. It continues to be used by drag clubs to introduce queens. And in 2006, it was used in a scene in a movie which brought Vogue back to the mainstream.
See you guys tomorrow. Take care of that finger, huh?
So, what do you think?
I think we better get out of here before my girlfriend sees me.
The Devil Wears Prada came out in June of 2006. The film, based on Lauren Weisberger's novel, starred Meryl Streep as Miranda Priestley, the ice-cold editor of Runway magazine, which was inspired by Vogue magazine. Anne Hathaway played Andy Sachs, the assistant who learns to play the game. The film made $326 million on a $41 million budget. It defined the office comedy genre for a generation. It is 20 years later, one of Disney's most streamed catalog titles. And in the middle of the film, there is a scene which we just played and you're hearing in the background. Andy walking through the streets of New York and Paris in escalating outfits, her transformation from a sweater-wearing journalism graduate into a fashion industry insider. It is the moment Andy becomes the kind of person Miranda would respect. It was a brilliant choice because the song already had a 16-year head start as the unofficial sound of fashion. By 2006, you didn't even have to introduce it. The audience knew. The piano hit and your brain did the rest. Now fast forward 19 more years. November 12, 2025. 20th Century Studios drops the first teaser for The Devil Wears Prada 2. The trailer is 50 seconds long. Meryl Streep walks into Runway's offices, and Hathaway gets in the elevator with her, and the looks they give each other and their brief conversation already became iconic. As Miranda says, took them long enough.
Miranda? Took you long enough.
The teaser became the most viewed comedy trailer in 15 years, 181.5 million views in its first 24 hours. The full trailer dropped during the 2026 Grammy Awards on February 1st. Same song, same elegant strings, same beat. The full trailer hit 222 million views in its first 24 hours, the most viewed trailer in 20th Century Studios history. With the film out in theaters, Vogue is once again the song that is selling fashion to the world. So let's come back to the question that has followed this song from the very beginning. Was Madonna an ambassador or an extractor? We have spent a long time on this question, and I think the honest answer is she was both. And the truth might be uncomfortable. Madonna gave voguing a level of visibility no documentary, no club night, no underground network was ever going to deliver. She brought Jose and Luis Extravaganza onto a world tour and into a world-famous documentary. She refused to denounce queer culture during the AIDS crisis, when most pop stars were silent. She used her power to push HIV-positive dancers, gay men, and ballroom culture into mainstream view at a time when politicians wouldn't even pronounce the word AIDS. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, a lot. And on the other side, and this has nothing to do really with what Madonna did or didn't do, the community she lifted was not compensated in proportion. The houses got name recognition without real infrastructure. The black trans women who had founded the entire scene, Crystal LaBeija, Pepper LaBeija, Willi Ninja, the figures Paris is Burning made famous, mostly died in poverty. Jose Extravaganza, when asked about cultural appropriation in 2018, gave one of the cleanest answers in this entire conversation. He said to the Bay Area Reporter, quote, "I'm very territorial about Vogue culture. I teach it all over the world. I always inform my students of the culture, not just the movement. LGBTQ people of color have created a culture that took in people who were thrown out into the street by straight people. We loved, nurtured, and supported them. What you see in voguing is real pride, beauty, and elegance, created out of struggle and hardship. People should know and acknowledge it." End quote. That is the legacy. That is the work that has continued past Madonna, past the song, past the moment. The houses are still here. The balls are still happening. There are voguing schools in 50 countries. In 2019, the Met Gala held a historic voguing competition called Battle of the Legends, Voguing at the Met. Anna Wintour, that former editor-in-chief of Vogue magazine who inspired The Devil Wears Prada, was judging alongside Jose Extravaganza. That is a sentence that would have been impossible in 1989. And it might as well be thanks to the war they mainly have in common.
Vogue.
And that is the story of Vogue, a song that was supposed to be a B-side recorded in a closet for $5,000, became the highest-selling single of 1990, inspired by a dance form invented by Black and Latino queer kids in Harlem who had been thrown out of their homes. Madonna walked into a New York club, watched two members of the House of Extravaganza dance, and decided to put the entire scene on MTV. The song hit #1 in over 30 countries. The video, directed by an unknown 27-year-old named David Fincher, became one of the greatest music videos ever made. The Marie Antoinette VMA performance burned itself into pop culture memory. And then, a year after the song was released, a documentary called Paris is Burning came out and showed the world the actual community Madonna had been borrowing from and lifting. Here's what I think the song really teaches us. Pop music does not exist in a vacuum. The biggest hits in history are almost never invented from nothing. They are usually a translation, a piece of underground culture, a marginalized art form, a sound from a community most of the world has never been forced to look at, brought up to the mainstream by an artist with the resources to amplify it. Sometimes that translation is generous. Sometimes it is extractive. Most of the time, the truth is messier than either. Vogue is the cleanest case study we have. The song is brilliant. The video is iconic. The performance was unforgettable. The dancers were credited on the album. The tour gave them a salary. Madonna spoke openly about queer culture during the AIDS crisis when most of pop music was silent. And even though most of the Voguers are still fighting to keep their culture and themselves alive, Vogue is still the song the fashion industry reaches for. It opened The Devil Wears Prada in 2006. It is opening The Devil Wears Prada 2 right now. It is the song that has outlived its critics, its lawsuits, its scandals, and most of the people who first danced to it. It is, in many ways, the most stubborn pop song of the last 40 years, and it is doing the same thing it has always done, selling fashion to America in a language that was invented by people America once refused to look at. That is the cover story. Vogue covered a culture. The culture survived the song, and the conversation about what was owed, what was paid, and what was lost, that is still happening on dance floors, in classrooms, on Pose, in Renaissance, on the runway of every fashion show that opens with a Voguing model. The story of Vogue is not over. It is just on a longer loop than most of us realized. This has been Uncovering the Cover, Vogue, the story of how Madonna covered an entire culture and turned Harlem's underground into the sound of The Devil Wears Prada. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend who also enjoys music culture, because our culture is best preserved when music is shared. Subscribe, follow us, and review us so we can reach more music culture fans. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok and let us know which song you'd like uncovered next. You can go to our website, which is linked in the show notes, to find a transcript and all the information regarding this episode. Uncovering the Cover brings you the hidden stories behind music's greatest transformations. Until next time.